I never imagined that waking up to the sound of heavy machinery would completely upend my life. I blinked away the sleep from my eyes and stumbled to my bedroom window, pulling back the curtains to a sight that made my blood run cold. Bulldozers and construction equipment were tearing through the eastern edge of my property, workers in hard hats swarming like ants around freshly dug foundations. "What the hell?" I muttered, grabbing my robe and slippers. As a district court judge for the past 15 years, I prided myself on maintaining a level head in all situations. But seeing strangers destroying the land my grandfather had passed down to me tested that composure to its limits. My name is Connor Harding, and I'd spent the last decade restoring the family property I'd inherited in Oak Ridge, Virginia. 5 acres of pristine woodland with a restored colonial farmhouse at its center. After my divorce 3 years ago, this place had become my sanctuary, my weekend retreat from the pressures of the bench in Richmond. I'd even planned to retire here eventually. I rushed outside without even bothering with coffee, my feet crunching on the gravel driveway as I approached the nearest worker. "Excuse me," I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. "What's going on here? This is private property." The worker, a young man probably in his 20s, looked confused. "Sir, we're just following the development plans. Meadowbrook Village Expansion, Phase 3. "There must be a mistake," I said. "This is my property. I've owned it for over 10 years. The worker shrugged apologetically and pointed to a woman in a bright yellow safety vest who appeared to be supervising the operation. "You'll have to talk to Mrs. Peterson over there. She's the site coordinator." I marched across what used to be a serene meadow, now churned into mud by heavy equipment. "Mrs. Peterson, I need an explanation immediately. You're trespassing on private property." The woman turned, clipboard in hand, her face pinched with annoyance beneath her hard hat. "And you are?" "Connor Harding. This is my property you're destroying." She consulted her clipboard with an air of bureaucratic efficiency that made my teeth clench. "Mr. Harding, this development has been properly approved by the Oak Ridge Homeowners Association. All permits are in order." Homeowners Association? "I don't belong to any HOA," I said, feeling the first flush of real anger warming my face despite the cool morning air. "Well," she replied with a condescending smile, "your property falls within the expanded boundaries of Meadowbrook Village as of last year's municipal rezoning. The HOA has full authority here." "I never received notification of any rezoning," I said, my judicial training kicking in. "And I certainly never agreed to join an HOA." "That's not my department, sir," she said dismissively. "You'll need to take that up with Vivian Sanders, our HOA president. Now, if you'll excuse me, we have a schedule to maintain. These duplexes need to be framed by the end of the month." Duplexes. I felt my stomach drop. "How many?" 13 units, she replied. "It's going to be a beautiful addition to our community." I took a deep breath, trying to center myself. "Mrs. Peterson, I'm ordering you as a property owner and as a judge of the Virginia District Court to cease all operations immediately. This is illegal construction, and you're liable for damages with every minute you continue." Her eyebrows shot up at the word judge, but she quickly regained her composure. "With all due respect, Your Honor, my orders come from the HOA Board and Silvercrest Development. I suggest you contact them." She handed me a business card. "Now, please leave the construction zone for safety reasons." I walked back to my house in a daze, the card clutched in my hand. Silvercrest Development. The name was vaguely familiar, possibly from a case that had crossed my desk. I needed to get dressed, call my clerk to clear my docket for the day, and figure out what was happening. Inside, I quickly showered and changed into a suit. Some battles required armor, even symbolic ones. I called my clerk, Janet, explaining I had a personal emergency, then poured myself a much-needed cup of coffee before sitting down at my desk to make some calls. First, I contacted the county clerk's office and requested copies of all rezoning documents affecting my property in the last 2 years. Then I called my friend Mark at the property records office. "Mark, it's Connor Harding. I need a huge favor." "Connor, how's life on the bench treating you?" His familiar voice was reassuring. "Not great at the moment. Someone's building duplexes on my property in Oak Ridge, claiming my land was rezoned and absorbed into some HOA territory." "What? That can't be right. Let me pull up your records." I heard keyboard clicking in the background. "I'm looking at your deed right now, Connor. 5 acres, clear title, property taxes paid in full. There's no lien, no easement, nothing that would allow construction. Can you check if there were any rezoning applications filed?" More clicking. "Nothing approved that would affect your parcel." There was an application submitted by Silvercrest Development 9 months ago, but it was denied by the county board. That caught my attention. "Denied? Are you absolutely certain?" 100%. "I'm looking at the minutes from the meeting right now. The board voted unanimously against it." "Could you email me copies of everything you have? And Mark, I might need you to testify if this goes to court. Of course, anything you need." My next call was to Sheriff Daniel Bridges, a man I'd known since law school. "Dan, I need your help. I've got unauthorized construction happening on my property in Oak Ridge. Heavy equipment, workers, the whole 9 yards. Connor, are you serious? Give me the address. I'll send a deputy out right away." Within 20 minutes, I was standing on my front porch when 2 sheriff's cruisers pulled up. Deputy Collins, a tall woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, approached me first. "Judge Harding," Sheriff Bridges called ahead. "Can you show us the problem?" I led them to the construction site, where work was continuing unabated. Mrs. Peterson spotted us approaching and immediately marched over, her expression tightening when she saw the deputies. "Is there a problem, officers?" she asked. "Madam, we're responding to a complaint about unauthorized construction," Deputy Collins said. "May I see your permits, please, Mrs. Peterson produced a folder from her vehicle and handed over several official-looking documents. "Everything's in order. We have approval from the Meadowbrook Village HOA and all necessary permits from the county." Deputy Collins examined the paperwork carefully before looking up with a frown. "These permits are for parcel 257B, but according to county records, we're currently standing on parcel 248A, registered to Connor Harding." "That's impossible," Mrs. Peterson protested. "Our surveys clearly show this is part of the Meadowbrook development zone." "Madam, I'm going to have to ask you to cease operations until we can sort this out," Deputy Collins said firmly. "We can't just stop a multi-million-dollar project based on some confusion over paperwork." Mrs. Peterson's voice rose an octave. "It's not a request," Deputy Collins replied, her hand resting casually on her utility belt. "Your crew needs to pack up and leave the property now, or you'll be cited for criminal trespass." Mrs. Peterson's face flushed red. "I need to call my supervisor. This is outrageous." As she stomped away to make her call, Deputy Collins turned to me. "Judge Harding, I'd recommend filing for an emergency injunction to prevent them from returning. This looks suspicious to me." "I'm already on it," I assured her, watching as the workers began shutting down equipment. "Thank you for responding so quickly." "Just doing our job, sir. We'll stick around until they've cleared out." By noon, the construction site was deserted, but the damage to my property remained: churned earth, half-dug foundations, and piles of building materials. I spent the afternoon on the phone with my attorney, filing for an emergency injunction. and preparing a civil suit against both Silvercrest Development and the Meadowbrook Village HOA. The next morning, I was preparing to head to the courthouse when a silver Mercedes SUV pulled into my driveway. A woman in her 50s emerged, dressed in an expensive-looking pantsuit, her blonde hair cut in a sharp bob. Her high heels clicked purposefully as she approached my front door. I opened it before she could knock. "Can I help you, Judge Harding?" "I'm Vivian Sanders, president of the Meadowbrook Village Homeowners Association." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "I understand there's been some confusion about our development project." "There's no confusion, Miss Sanders. You're building on my property without permission, which is trespassing and property damage, possibly fraud if those permits were deliberately falsified." Her smile tightened. "May I come in? I think we can resolve this amicably." Against my better judgment, I let her in. We sat in my living room, the morning sun streaming through the windows onto the antique furniture my grandmother had lovingly collected. "Beautiful home," she commented, glancing around. "It would fit nicely with our community aesthetic." "It's not part of your community," I replied coolly. "And it never will be," she sighed, opening her designer handbag and pulling out a folder. "Judge Harding, I understand your attachment to this property, but progress is inevitable. Meadowbrook Village is expanding, bringing jobs and economic growth to Oak Ridge. The county supports our vision." "Not according to the county records, which show your rezoning application was denied." If she was surprised I knew this, she didn't show it. "An initial setback. We've been working closely with certain county officials to address their concerns." "Are you implying you've circumvented proper channels?" I asked, my judicial mask firmly in place. "Of course not," she replied smoothly. "I'm simply explaining that development is complex. Sometimes the paperwork doesn't perfectly align with the agreements reached." "Verbal agreements don't supersede written law, Miss Sanders. Now, what exactly do you want?" She placed a document on the coffee table between us. "A reasonable solution. Meadowbrook Village is prepared to offer you triple the market value for your property. You'd be able to purchase something much larger, perhaps closer to Richmond." I didn't even glance at the paper. "I'm not selling. Judge Harding," her tone hardened slightly, "I don't think you understand the implications of standing in the way of progress. The HOA has considerable influence in this county." "Is that a threat?" She laughed lightly. "Not at all, just a statement of fact. We have over 300 homeowners who vote, donate, and participate in local politics. Fighting us could become uncomfortable for you." I leaned forward. "Miss Sanders, let me be very clear. I don't respond well to pressure tactics. Your construction crews trespassed on my property and caused significant damage. I've already filed for an injunction and am preparing a civil suit against your HOA and Silvercrest Development. If there's evidence of fraud or corruption involving county officials, I'll ensure that's thoroughly investigated as well." Her pleasant facade cracked slightly. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. Gerald Blackwood, the CEO of Silvercrest, plays golf with the governor." "Then Mr. Blackwood should have taught him about property rights," I replied. "Now, unless you're here to discuss compensation for the damage you've caused, I think we're done." Vivian stood, smoothing her pantsuit. "This isn't over, Judge Harding, not by a long shot." She marched to the door, pausing with her hand on the knob. "The HOA board meets tonight. We'll be discussing our options regarding your situation." After she left, I immediately called my attorney again to update him on the conversation. Then I drove to the Richmond courthouse to file the emergency injunction paperwork myself, recusing myself from hearing the case due to my personal involvement. Judge Patricia Ramirez, a colleague I respected for her thoroughness, was assigned to the case. She granted the temporary injunction by late afternoon, legally barring any construction on my property pending a full hearing. Armed with the injunction, I stopped by the sheriff's office to give Dan a copy, ensuring his deputies would enforce it if necessary. Then I headed home, feeling slightly more in control of the situation. I decided to do some research on both Vivian Sanders and Silvercrest Development. A few hours online revealed some interesting connections. Vivian had been HOA president for 7 years, during which time Meadowbrook Village had expanded twice, doubling in size. Silvercrest was their exclusive developer, and county records showed several variance approvals that seemed questionable at best. More concerning was the connection between Gerald Blackwood, Silvercrest's CEO, and County Commissioner Thomas Morgan. They served together on multiple charity boards, and Morgan had consistently voted in favor of Silvercrest's projects. It wasn't proof of corruption, but it certainly warranted closer examination. My doorbell rang around 9 p.m. I opened it to find Deputy Collins standing there, looking uncomfortable. "Judge Harding, I apologize for the late visit, but I thought you should know that the Meadowbrook Village HOA just concluded their emergency meeting. One of our officers was there keeping the peace because the residents got pretty heated." "What happened, Miss?" "Sanders announced they voted to assess a special fee on all homeowners to create a legal defense fund, specifically for fighting your injunction. They're claiming your property was legally incorporated into their jurisdiction through some municipal boundary adjustment last year." "That's complete fiction," I said. "I thought as much," Deputy Collins nodded. "But they've got some documents they're waving around that look official. I took photos." She handed me her phone. The images showed a county letterhead document with what appeared to be an official stamp. "But something was off about it. Deputy, could you forward these to me? I need to check something." "Already did, sir. Sheriff Bridges thought you might want them." She hesitated. "There's one more thing. Some of the homeowners seemed genuinely upset and confused. They're saying they were told these duplexes would be built on unused county land that was being repurposed for affordable housing. Many of them didn't even know it was private property." That was interesting. Sounds like Miss Sanders hasn't been entirely truthful with her own members. "That's my take as well," Deputy Collins agreed. "Just wanted to give you a heads up." "Good night, Judge." After she left, I checked my email and found the photos. Examining them closely, I noticed the county seal was slightly different from the current version. They were using an outdated template. Another red flag. The next morning, I drove to the county administration building and met with the clerk who handled official records. She confirmed my suspicions the boundary adjustment document was a forgery. The authorization signatures didn't match those of the officials purported to have signed it, and no such adjustment had ever been officially recorded. I was compiling evidence for what was looking increasingly like fraud when my phone rang. It was Janet, my court clerk. "Judge Harding, I hate to bother you during your personal time, but something strange just happened. A woman named Vivian Sanders came by asking questions about your schedule and whether you had any conflicts of interest with development companies. When I wouldn't tell her anything, she implied she had friends on the Judicial Review Board." My grip tightened on the phone. "Thank you for letting me know, Janet, and thank you for your discretion." "Of course." "Oh, and she left this." Janet texted me a photo of a business card for Sanders Consulting Community Development Solutions. I searched the name online and discovered Vivian Sanders wasn't just the HOA president, she was a paid consultant for Silvercrest Development. The conflict of interest was blatant and potentially illegal if she hadn't disclosed it to HOA members. The plot was thickening. And I was beginning to see the outlines of something far more concerning than an overzealous HOA. I decided to pay a visit to Meadowbrook Village myself, to get a better sense of what I was dealing with. The development was immaculate, with uniform beige houses arranged in tidy rows, each yard manicured to precise HOA standards. American flags flew from approved flagpoles, and children's toys were nowhere in sight, likely restricted to backyards by HOA rules. I parked near what appeared to be a community park and walked around, nodding politely to residents. Eventually, I struck up a conversation with an older gentleman walking his perfectly groomed poodle. "Nice neighborhood," I commented. "It's a good place to live," he agreed cautiously. "Are you looking to buy? Just exploring options," I said vaguely. "I heard there's some new construction happening soon." The man's expression darkened. "The duplexes. Big controversy right now. Some of us are wondering why we weren't consulted about the plans before they started clearing land." "Oh, I thought HOAs usually voted on major changes," he snorted. "Theory and practice are different things. Vivian runs this place like her personal kingdom. Board meetings are technically open, but they're scheduled at 2 p.m. on Wednesdays when most people are working. Convenient, isn't it?" "Very," I agreed. "Have you lived here long?" "5 years. It was great at first, but the rules keep changing. Last year, they tripled our landscaping requirements but restricted which companies we can hire to only 3 approved vendors. Guess who owns shares in all 3? "Let me guess, Miss Sanders." "Bingo." He glanced around nervously. "Listen, don't mention this conversation. Last guy who complained too loudly got hit with so many violation fees he had to sell." "Your secret's safe with me," I promised. "By the way, did you know about the legal issues with the duplex construction?" "What legal issues?" "The land they're building on belongs to a private owner who never sold it. There's a court injunction stopping the project now." His eyes widened. "Are you serious?" Vivian told everyone it was unused county land they got for a sweetheart deal because of their affordable housing component. "There's no affordable housing component," I said. "They're market-rate duplexes." "Son of a," he shook his head. "I knew something was fishy when they raised our dues for infrastructure improvements but couldn't provide specifics. Do many residents feel this way?" "More than would say it publicly. There's a group that meets unofficially to discuss HOA issues. They'd probably be interested in hearing about this." He gave me contact information for the group's leader, a woman named Julia Ortega who taught at the local high school. I thanked him and continued my walk, gathering similar impressions from 2 other residents brave enough to chat with a stranger. That evening, I called Julia and arranged to meet her and several other concerned homeowners at a coffee shop in the next town over safely outside HOA territory. 6 people showed up, all nervous but determined to understand what was happening. "I'm Connor Harding," I introduced myself. "The duplexes you've been hearing about are being built on my property without my permission." Julia, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, leaned forward. "Are you the one who got the injunction?" "Yes, and I've discovered some concerning information about how this project was presented to you all." I laid out what I'd learned: the forged boundary documents, the misrepresentation of the land's ownership, and Vivian's undisclosed financial relationship with Silvercrest. "This explains so much," said a man who introduced himself as Robert. 3 years ago, they forced through those luxury townhomes on the west side using similar tactics. Anyone who opposed them got buried in violation notices. "We're tired of it," Julia said firmly. "But what can we do? Vivian has the board stacked with her friends." "HOAs are bound by their own bylaws and state law," I explained. "If she's violated those, there are legal remedies. I'd need to see your HOA's governing documents to advise further. Julia pulled out a thick binder. I brought copies for everyone. I've highlighted the sections I think she's ignored. We spent the next 2 hours reviewing the documents. The bylaws clearly stated that any land acquisition or major construction project required a 2/3 vote of all members, not just the board. No such vote had occurred for the duplex project. This gives you grounds to challenge the board's actions, I told them, but you'll need evidence of the violations and probably legal representation. We can't afford to fight Vivian's legal fund, Robert said dejectedly. You might not have to, I replied. My case against them could potentially benefit you all. If I can prove fraud and misuse of HOA funds, it could trigger a state investigation into the board's practices. We'll help however we can, Julia promised. Most of us have documentation of selective enforcement and questionable financial decisions. By the time we left the coffee shop, we had the beginnings of a coordinated response. Julia and her group would gather evidence from residents, while I pursued my legal case against both the HOA and Silvercrest. The next day, I received notice that a hearing for my injunction case was scheduled for the following week. I spent the weekend preparing, gathering property records, photographs of the damage, and statements from neighbors who had witnessed the construction starting without warning. Monday morning brought another surprise visitor, Gerald Blackwood himself, CEO of Silvercrest Development. His black Bentley looked out of place in my rural driveway. Like Vivian's forced pleasantries, Blackwood was all business as he stepped out of his car. "Judge Harding," he called out as I opened my front door. "Gerald Blackwood, I believe we need to talk." I invited him in, curious to hear his approach. "I'll be direct," he said, declining my offer of coffee. "This situation has gotten out of hand. I've reviewed the property records personally, and it appears there's been a serious misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" "Your company started building on land you don't own. That's not a misunderstanding, it's illegal." He waved his hand dismissively. "These things happen in development. Boundary disputes, paperwork errors. The important thing is finding a solution that works for everyone. The solution is simple: remove your equipment, restore my property to its original condition, and compensate me for damages." Blackwood chuckled. "Come now, Judge. We both know nothing is ever that simple. I've invested millions in this project already. The infrastructure alone, water, sewer, electrical, represents significant capital that can't simply be written off. You made those investments without securing proper title to the land. That's your mistake, not mine." He studied me for a moment. "You're not like most people we deal with." "I should hope not. Let me propose something different," he said, leaning forward. "Silvercrest would like to hire you as a consultant. Your legal expertise would be invaluable in navigating complex development regulations. We'd offer a very generous compensation package, say $500,000 per year. Plus, of course, we'd purchase your property at triple market value." I stared at him, momentarily speechless at the brazen attempt to buy me off. "Mr. Blackwood, are you attempting to bribe a sitting judge?" He laughed as if I'd told a particularly amusing joke. "Bribe? No. This is a legitimate business proposition. Your judicial experience makes you uniquely qualified to advise on regulatory compliance. While I'm still presiding over cases that might involve development disputes, that would be highly unethical if not outright illegal. You could recuse yourself from such cases," he suggested smoothly. "Many judges have consulting arrangements." "Not with parties appearing before their court," I countered. "Mr. Blackwood, I'm going to ask you to leave now before you say something that might constitute a criminal offense." His pleasant demeanor vanished. "Don't be naive, Harding. Do you really think you can win against me? I have connections you can't imagine. And I have the law on my side, I replied, standing to show him out, which still matters in Virginia, regardless of who you play golf with. As he walked to his car, he turned with a final warning. This isn't going to end well for you. There are many ways to apply pressure, and Vivian has only just started. After he left, I immediately called Sheriff Bridges to report the incident, which felt dangerously close to attempted bribery of a judicial officer. Dan advised me to document everything and suggested I might want to install security cameras around my property. "These people play rough, Connor," he warned. "Be careful." I followed his advice and ordered a comprehensive security system that same day. I also contacted Judge Ramirez to inform her of Blackwood's visit, as it related directly to the case before her. The next few days brought a series of escalating harassment. First, a county health inspector showed up claiming they'd received complaints about my septic system. He found nothing wrong but warned me the inspection had been unusually specific in its targeting. Then came a notice from the county claiming my driveway entrance violated setback requirements, despite it having existed in the same location for over 40 years. When I investigated, I discovered the complaint had been filed by Sanders Consulting. Most concerning was the anonymous letter left in my mailbox, containing personal information about my daily routine and suggesting I reconsider my position while I still could. I turned this over to Sheriff Bridges immediately, who opened a criminal investigation for harassment and possible stalking. By Friday, Julia had collected statements from 28 Meadowbrook residents documenting various HOA abuses, from selective rule enforcement to questionable financial decisions. Several reported being pressured to sign proxies giving Vivian their votes at HOA meetings they couldn't attend due to work commitments. The court hearing was scheduled for Monday morning. Over the weekend, I finalized my presentation with my attorney, organizing the evidence chronologically to show the pattern of deception and intimidation. Sunday evening, I received a text from an unknown number. "Check local news tonight. You've been warned." The 11 o'clock news featured a story about a local judge under investigation for ethical violations, citing anonymous sources claiming I had conflicts of interest in cases involving property developers. The report was careful to use terms like alleged and according to sources. But the damage was clear. My reputation was being publicly attacked. I barely slept that night, but arrived at the courthouse Monday morning determined and focused. As I approached the courtroom, I saw Vivian surrounded by a team of attorneys. She smirked when she spotted me, clearly confident in her position. Judge Ramirez called the court to order promptly at 9 a.m. My attorney presented our case first, methodically establishing my clear ownership of the property, the lack of any valid rezoning, and the damage caused by the unauthorized construction. When Vivian's lead attorney rose to respond, his strategy became clear obfuscation and delay. He presented the forged boundary adjustment documents, claiming they showed the property had been legally incorporated into Meadowbrook Village jurisdiction. "Your Honor," he argued smoothly, "this is simply a misunderstanding about where one property ends and another begins. We propose a new survey to resolve the boundary dispute." Judge Ramirez frowned. "Counselor, the County Records Office has already confirmed that these boundary adjustment documents are not authentic. Are you submitting potentially fraudulent evidence to this court?" The attorney blanched. "Your Honor, we were provided these documents in good faith by our client." "Who prepared these documents?" Judge Ramirez asked directly. Vivian's attorney glanced nervously at his client before responding. "I believe they came from the HOA's files, Your Honor." Judge Ramirez turned her attention to Vivian. "Miss Sanders, as president of the HOA, can you explain the provenance of these documents?" Vivian cleared her throat. "They were provided to us by Silvercrest Development as part of the project planning process, Your Honor." The back and forth continued, with each party attempting to shift responsibility. Finally, Judge Ramirez cut through the evasions. "I've heard enough. The temporary injunction will remain in place. Furthermore, I'm ordering a complete halt to any construction activity on or adjacent to Judge Harding's property pending a full trial. Additionally, I'm referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for investigation into possible forgery of official documents and fraud." Vivian's face went pale. Her attorney quickly requested a recess to confer with his client. During the break, Gerald Blackwood himself arrived, bursting into the courtroom with an entourage of lawyers. He immediately went into a heated discussion with Vivian and her legal team. When court reconvened, Blackwood's lead attorney addressed the bench. "Your Honor, in light of the apparent confusion regarding property boundaries, Silvercrest Development wishes to withdraw from this project pending resolution of all legal issues." It was a strategic retreat. Blackwood was cutting his losses and leaving Vivian and the HOA to face the consequences alone. Judge Ramirez wasn't letting him off that easily. "Mr. Blackwood, this court has serious questions about your company's role in producing apparently fraudulent documents. I expect full cooperation with any investigation." The hearing concluded with a clear victory for me. The injunction was made permanent until a full trial could be held, and Judge Ramirez ordered the HOA and Silvercrest to begin remediation of the damage to my property within 30 days. Outside the courtroom, I was approached by Julia and several other Meadowbrook residents who had attended the hearing. "We had no idea how bad this was," Julia said, clearly shaken. "Half the board resigned this morning when they saw the evidence packet you filed with the court. They're claiming Vivian kept them in the dark." "What happens to the HOA now?" I asked. "Emergency elections next week," she replied. "A lot of us are planning to run for the board. If we win, we want to completely overhaul the bylaws to prevent something like this from happening again." Over the next few weeks, the story unraveled further. The district attorney's investigation revealed that Vivian had been receiving substantial consulting fees from Silvercrest for each project she helped push through the HOA. County Commissioner Morgan was also implicated, having accepted campaign contributions and other benefits in exchange for favorable treatment of Silvercrest projects. The forged documents were traced back to a former county clerk who had been fired 3 years earlier and was now working for Sanders Consulting. He quickly turned state's evidence in exchange for leniency. 2 months after the initial hearing, Vivian Sanders was arrested on multiple charges, including fraud, falsifying official documents, and misappropriation of HOA funds. Gerald Blackwood faced charges of his own, though his high-priced legal team would likely delay any serious consequences for years. The new Meadowbrook Village HOA board, led by Julia Ortega as president, voted unanimously to cooperate with authorities and to formally apologize to me for the actions of the previous leadership. They also instituted sweeping reforms, including evening meetings, transparent financial reporting, and strict conflict of interest policies. As for my property, the cleanup took months. Silvercrest was ordered to remove all construction materials and equipment, restore the topsoil, and replant native trees and vegetation to replace what had been destroyed. They were also required to pay substantial damages, which I largely donated to a legal aid fund for homeowners dealing with HOA disputes. The 13 half-built duplexes were demolished under court order, each concrete foundation jackhammered and hauled away. I stood watching on the final day of removal, feeling a complex mixture of vindication and sadness that it had come to this. Sheriff Bridges joined me, surveying the now cleared land where construction equipment had once threatened to transform my sanctuary into a crowded housing development. "Hard to believe it's been 6 months since you called me that first morning," he said. "Sometimes the system works," I replied. "Slowly, imperfectly, but it works. When people like you are willing to fight for it," he added. "Most folks would have taken Blackwood's buyout offer." I shook my head. "Some things aren't for sale. This land has been in my family for generations. My grandfather used to tell me that we don't really own it, we're just taking care of it for those who come after us." As we walked back toward my house, I noticed new growth already emerging from the disturbed soil, resilient Virginia wildflowers reclaiming their territory. "What happens now?" Dan asked. "Think they'll try again?" "Not here," I said confidently, "but somewhere else, probably. There are always developers looking for the next opportunity, and HOAs that forget they're supposed to serve homeowners, not rule them. At least Meadowbrook seems to be on a better path. Julia will make sure of that," I agreed. "She's already working with other HOA reform groups across the state to push for legislation requiring greater transparency and accountability." That evening, as the sun set over my restored property, I sat on my porch reflecting on the lessons of the past months. The experience had shown me both the worst and best of community governance, how easily power could corrupt, but also how determined citizens could reclaim that power when motivated to act together. I decided then that after my retirement from the bench, I would focus my legal expertise on helping homeowners navigate the complex world of HOA law. It wasn't the retirement I had originally envisioned, but it felt right away to ensure that what happened to me couldn't easily happen to others. A year later, the only evidence of the attempted development was a slightly different shade of green where new grass had grown over the restored soil. My property remained intact, protected now by additional legal safeguards I had put in place. Vivian Sanders eventually pled guilty to reduced charges in exchange for testimony against Blackwood and Commissioner Morgan. She received 3 years probation, a substantial fine, and was barred from serving in any HOA leadership position or working in property development. Blackwood's case was still winding through the courts, his resources allowing him to delay justice through procedural maneuvers. But his reputation was irreparably damaged, and Silvercrest stock had plummeted as additional investigations revealed similar tactics in other developments. The Meadowbrook Village HOA had transformed under Julia's leadership, becoming a model for community governance. Their reformed bylaws and transparent processes were being adopted by other associations throughout Virginia. As for me, I continued my work on the bench, more attuned than ever to the quiet power dynamics that could undermine justice in unexpected ways. The experience had changed me as a judge, making me particularly vigilant in cases where ordinary citizens faced powerful interests. On the anniversary of that first morning when I'd awakened to the sound of bulldozers, I walked the perimeter of my property at dawn. The peace of the place had returned, birds singing, deer grazing at the forest edge, the morning mist rising from the meadow. I thought about how close I'd come to losing it all, not to a natural disaster or economic hardship, but to the simple corruption of power and process. It reinforced my belief that vigilance was the price of liberty, even in something as seemingly mundane as a homeowners association. The 13 duplexes that never came to be had taught me a lesson I would never forget: that justice requires not just good laws, but people willing to stand up for them, especially when facing those who believe their influence places them above the rules that govern everyone else. As I completed my walk and headed back toward my house, still standing proud after weathering yet another challenge in its long history, I felt a deep gratitude. Not just for my victory, but for the reminder that even in the face of seemingly overwhelming opposition, the law, when properly applied, could still protect the rights of the individual against those who would use their power to take what was not rightfully theirs.